The great hall of Nex Prime was silent. Thousands of alien beings sat in their seats, watching the small group of humans standing in the center of the room. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. The walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of the room. Right now, they glowed a deep, angry red dot. Admiral Jake Morrison stood straight and tall. His gray uniform was clean and pressed. His face showed no fear, even though he knew what was coming. Beside him stood Dr. Katie Lynn, a woman with kind eyes and silver hair. She had spent 15 years trying to make peace with these aliens. Now, all her work was about to become nothing. The Galactic Conclave had ruled the Milky Way for 50,000 years. 12 ancient species made up this great council. They had watched younger races rise and fall like waves on a beach. They had seen empires born and die. They believed they knew everything about how the universe worked, and they were afraid of humanity. Sovereign Aldrich of the Valeth rose from his throne. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed like dying stars. His people had been traveling between worlds when humans still lived in caves. He looked down at the two humans with something between pity and disgust. "We have made our decision," Aldrich said. His voice filled the entire hall without effort. "The species known as humanity is too dangerous to remain among us." Katie stepped forward. "Sovereign, please. We have done nothing wrong. We have followed every rule. We have respected every boundary. What crime have we committed?" A sound like thunder rolled through the hall. It was laughter from the Kisari delegation. High Minister Voss, a creature that looked like a giant insect made of black glass, clicked his mandibles together. "Your crime is what you are," he said. "Your crime is what you will become." Jake felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. "And what exactly is that?" he asked. Aldrich waved his long hand, and images appeared in the air above the humans. They showed Earth's history in fast motion. Wars, weapons, explosions, cities burning. Then the images changed. They showed human ships spreading across the stars. Colony after colony. World after world. The speed of human expansion made even the oldest species nervous. 300 years ago, you discovered how to travel faster than light, Aldrich said. In that short time, you have built 17 colonies. You have created weapons that rival our own. You breed faster than any species we have ever seen. You adapt to any environment. You never stop pushing forward. Those are good things, Katie said. We are explorers. We are builders. We want to learn and grow. You want to consume, said the Andreth representative. She was a being of pure energy, floating in a containment field. Her voice entered their minds directly. We have watched your kind. You take and take and take. You call it progress. We call it destruction. Jake could not stay silent anymore. We came to you in peace. We asked to join your conclave as equals. We offered trade and friendship. And you answer with judgment? The hall fell completely silent. No one spoke to the conclave this way. No one. Aldrich's eyes narrowed. You have proven our point, human. You do not know your place. You do not accept limits. And that is why you cannot stay. He raised his hand, and the images in the air changed again. They showed a region of space at the very edge of the galaxy. It was dark and empty. No stars, no planets, no hyperspace lanes. Nothing but endless void. This is the outer veil, Aldrich announced. You will be relocated there. Your son and all your colony worlds will be moved beyond the barrier we will create. You will live out your existence far from the civilized galaxy. You will never return. Katie felt her heart stop. You cannot be serious. That region cannot support life. There are no resources, no connections to anything. You are sentencing billions of people to death. We are giving you a chance, Aldrich replied coldly. More than many on this council wanted to give. The Khazari voted for immediate extinction. The Aldrich suggested genetic modification to remove your aggressive tendencies. Exile is mercy. Jake looked around the hall at the thousands of alien faces watching them. He saw no sympathy, no doubt, only fear hidden behind masks of superiority. These beings had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to struggle. They had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival, and they had no idea what they were about to create. How long do we have? Jake asked quietly. 6 of your months, Aldrich said. The relocation technology requires time to prepare. Use that time wisely. Say goodbye to the stars you will never see again. The guards came then. They were veilless soldiers in armor that looked like liquid metal. They surrounded the 2 humans and led them out of the great hall. Behind them, the conclave members began to celebrate. They believed they had solved the human problem forever. Katie walked in silence, tears running down her face. Everything she had worked for was gone. Every hope for peaceful cooperation was dead. But Jake was not crying. His mind was already working, already planning. When they reached their ship, a small diplomatic vessel called the Messenger, Jake finally spoke. Send a message to Earth, he told his communication officer. Priority 1. Tell them what happened. Tell them to start preparing. Preparing for what, sir? The young officer asked. Jake looked out the window at the stars. These aliens thought they understood humanity. They had studied human history and seen only violence and chaos. They had missed the most important thing about humans. Humans did their best work when everyone said they would fail. Tell them to prepare for everything, Jake said. We have 6 months. Then we enter the void. And when we come out, he paused and smiled, but there was no warmth in it. When we come out, the galaxy will remember why they should have been afraid. The messenger's engines came to life. The small ship turned away from Nex Prime and began its journey home. Behind them, the conclave continued their celebration, completely unaware that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They wanted humanity gone, because they feared what humans might become. They had no idea that exile would make those fears come true 1,000 times over. In the darkness between stars, Admiral Jake Morrison made a silent promise. Not for revenge, not for hatred, but for something far more powerful. He promised that humanity would survive. And then humanity would rise. The conclave would learn that you cannot bury something that knows how to grow. 20 years had passed since the Great Exile. On the capital world of the Valith Empire, Sovereign Aldrich sat in his private garden and smiled. The flowers around him came from 100 different planets. The water in his fountain had been collected from sacred springs across the galaxy. Everything was peaceful. Everything was perfect, and the humans were surely dead by now. Reports from the barrier showed nothing. No signals came from beyond the outer veil. No ships tried to escape. The humans had been swallowed by the darkness, just as the conclave had planned. Aldrich closed his eyes and enjoyed the warm sunlight on his silver skin. The galaxy was safe. He could not have been more wrong. Beyond the barrier, in the empty darkness that was supposed to be a graveyard, something incredible was happening. Humanity was not dying. Humanity was being reborn. The first year had been hard. Dr. Nathan Cole remembered those dark days clearly. He was a physicist from the New Chicago Research Station, and he had watched as panic spread across the exiled worlds. Food supplies were limited. Energy was running low. People were afraid. But then something changed. Admiral Jake Morrison, now an old man with white hair and tired eyes, gave a speech that was broadcast to every human world. He stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance and spoke simply and clearly. "They threw us away because they feared what we might become," he said. "Let us show them that their fear was justified. Not through anger, not through hatred, but through becoming something they could never imagine. We are human. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We have walked on moons and split atoms. This darkness is just another challenge, and we will overcome it." Something sparked that day. Old enemies became friends. Countries that had fought for centuries joined hands. Scientists who had competed for fame began working together. Every human being, from the oldest elder to the youngest child, found a purpose. Nathan Cole led the energy research team. For 3 years, they worked in a small laboratory on a frozen moon. They failed again and again. Their equipment broke. Their theories proved wrong. But they did not give up. On the morning of the 4th year, Nathan made the discovery that would change everything. He found a way to pull energy directly from empty space itself. The quantum vacuum, the foundation of reality, became an endless source of power. Suddenly, humanity had unlimited fuel. The changes came fast after that. Grace Morrison, the Admiral's daughter, was now a lieutenant commander in charge of the Vanguard fleet. She was tall and strong, with her father's determination and her mother's clever mind. When the new energy technology arrived, she oversaw the construction of a new kind of ship. "Make it faster than anything that exists," she told her engineers. "Make it stronger than anything they have ever seen. Make it something that will make the conclave forget how to breathe." Tony Reyes was the chief engineer on the project. He was a quiet man who preferred machines to people. But when he worked, miracles happened. He created hull plating that could heal itself after taking damage. He designed engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. He built weapons that made conclave technology look like children's toys. Dr. Laura Kim worked on the pilots. She developed a system that connected human minds directly to their ships. A pilot would not just fly their vessel. They would become their vessel. Every sensor would be their eyes. Every weapon would be their hands. Human and machine would merge into something new. In the biology labs, Dr. Chris Park solved the food problem. He created plants that could grow on any world, in any condition. He designed ecosystems that could turn dead moons into living gardens. Humanity spread across the outer veil like seeds scattered by the wind. Year after year, the transformation continued. Cities rose from asteroids. Forests grew on planets that had been lifeless rock. Ships filled the empty space that was supposed to be a grave. But the most important discovery came in the 15th year. Nathan Cole was studying the barrier that trapped them when he noticed something strange. The barrier used technology that was incredibly old. Much older than the conclave. Much older than any living species in the galaxy. He dug deeper. He found hidden frequencies and coded messages buried in the barrier's energy signature. They led him to records that the conclave had kept secret for thousands of years. The architects. Long ago, before the conclave existed, another species had ruled the galaxy. They had built the hyperspace lanes that connected the stars. They had created technology that modern science could not explain. And then they had vanished, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. The conclave had found some of their secrets and used them to maintain power. But they had hidden the rest, afraid of what might happen if younger species found them. Now humanity had a map to those hidden secrets. Grace Morrison stood before the War Council, now made up of the best minds and leaders humanity had produced. Her father was too sick to attend, but she carried his fire inside her. "We have spent 20 years preparing," she said. "We have built a fleet of 40,000 ships. We have technology that the conclave cannot understand. And now we know where to find even more power. The question is simple. Do we stay here in safety, or do we take back what is ours?" The vote was unanimous. In the 20th year, the barrier around the outer veil began to flicker. The conclave's monitoring stations detected the change and sent urgent messages to their leaders that something was happening. Something was coming. On the bridge of the newly built flagship Awakening, Grace Morrison watched the barrier fall. Not from the outside. From within, they had learned the architect's secrets. They had mastered the ancient technology. And now nothing could keep them caged. "Send a message to Earth," Grace ordered. "Tell them it is time. The exile is over." In his garden on the Valeth homeworld, Sovereign Aldrich received the news. His silver skin turned pale. His hands began to shake. The humans had not died. The humans had evolved, and now they were coming home. The conclave sent 12 scout ships to investigate the fallen barrier. They were fast vessels with the best sensors the Khazari could build. Their crews were brave soldiers who had fought in a dozen different wars. They flew into the space where the outer veil had been, expecting to find ruins and corpses. None of them returned. For 3 months, the galaxy held its breath. The conclave's leaders met in secret. They argued and shouted and blamed each other. Some wanted to send a full war fleet. Others wanted to wait and watch. A few suggested that maybe, just maybe, they should try to talk to the humans. That debate ended when a single ship appeared at the edge of Khazari space. It was small, barely bigger than a transport shuttle. It had no weapons visible on its hull. It looked almost harmless, but it had crossed a distance of 10,000 light years in less than 2 hours. The conclave's fastest ships would have needed 6 weeks. For the same journey, the ship broadcast a simple message. In every known language. "This is Ambassador Katie Lynn of Earth. We request an audience with the Galactic Conclave. Humanity has returned." Sovereign Aldrich received the message in his throne room. He stood frozen for a long moment, memories of that day 20 years ago flooding his mind. The confident human admiral. The diplomat with kind eyes. He had thought them destroyed. He had been so certain. The conclave agreed to meet. They chose the neutral station of Harmony Prime, a massive structure floating in the space between empires. The station had been built centuries ago as a place for peaceful discussion. Now it would witness the return of humanity. Katie Lynn arrived, alone. She walked through the great doors of the meeting hall with calm, measured steps. She was 70 years old now, but she did not look it. Her hair was still dark. Her skin was smooth. Her eyes were sharp and clear. Human medical science had advanced far beyond what the conclave could imagine. The 12 leaders of the conclave sat in their traditional circle. Aldrich was there, his silver face carefully controlled. High Minister Voss clicked his mandibles nervously. The Aldrich representative floated in her energy field, trying to read Katie's thoughts and finding nothing. The human mind was somehow shielded from her abilities. "You requested this meeting," Aldrich said coldly. "Speak." Katie smiled. It was not the desperate smile of a refugee. It was the confident smile of someone who held all the cards. 20 years ago, you sentenced humanity to death," she began. "You called us dangerous. You called us unpredictable. You threw us into the darkest corner of the galaxy and expected us to die quietly." She paused and looked around the circle. "We did not die." She raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed a map of the outer veil, but it was not empty anymore. Over 200 dots glowed with the light of human colonies. Cities, shipyards, research stations. An entire civilization had grown in the place meant to be a graveyard. "You gave us nothing," Katie continued. "No resources, no support, no hope. And we turned that nothing into this." The display changed. It showed the human fleet. Ship after ship after ship. 40,000 vessels, each one gleaming with technology the conclave had never seen. The designs were strange and beautiful. They looked less like machines and more like living things. High Minister Voss made a sound of disbelief. Impossible. You could not have built all this. Not in 20 years. Not with nothing. Humans are very good at doing impossible things, Katie replied. We always have been. That is what frightened you so much. Aldrich leaned forward. What do you want, human? Revenge? You cannot seriously believe that your small fleet can defeat the combined might of the conclave. We have millions of ships. We have weapons that can crack planets. You are still outnumbered. Katie's smile did not waver. Sovereign Aldrich, with respect, you have no idea what we can do. Your weapons are based on technology you barely understand. Secrets stolen from the architects and used without wisdom. We have found the original sources. We have learned what you never could. The Aldrich representative suddenly cried out. She had been trying again to probe Katie's mind, and this time she had seen something. Just a glimpse. Just a fraction of what humanity had become. It was enough to make her tremble. She speaks truth, the Aldrich whispered. They are different now. Changed. I have never sensed anything like it. Katie nodded. We come with a simple message. The age of the conclave is over. You have ruled through fear and control for 50,000 years. You have crushed any species that might challenge you. That ends now. Aldrich stood, his silver robes flowing around him. You dare threaten us? After everything we could have done to you? We showed mercy by exiling you instead of destroying you. And that mercy, Katie said quietly, was your greatest mistake. She turned and began walking toward the door. We do not want war. We do not want revenge. We want change. The galaxy deserves better than rulers who are afraid of progress. You have one standard week to accept our terms. Dissolve the conclave. Join the new order as equal partners. Share power instead of hoarding it. She stopped at the door and looked back. If you refuse, we will remove you ourselves. And Sovereign, I promise you this. It will not take long. She left the station without another word. Her small ship departed, vanishing into hyperspace with impossible speed. The conclave sat in stunned silence. High Minister Voss was the first to speak. She is bluffing. She must be. Call the war fleets. Assemble every ship we have. We will crush these humans once and for all. Aldrich nodded slowly. Agreed. They had their chance for peace. Now, they will learn what happens to those who challenge the conclave. Orders went out across the galaxy. Millions of ships began to move. The greatest military force ever assembled prepared for war. They believed they were about to win an easy victory. They were wrong. Somewhere beyond the stars, Grace Morrison received word that the conclave had chosen war. She stood on the bridge of the awakening, surrounded by officers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They made their choice, she said calmly. Now we make ours. All ships, prepare for battle. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity has become. The human fleet began to move. 40,000 ships against millions. The numbers looked hopeless. But the conclave had forgotten something important about humans. They never fought fair. And they never gave up. The war that was supposed to destroy humanity lasted 11 days. On the first day, the conclave fleet gathered above Nex Prime. It was an incredible sight. 2 million ships from 12 different species, filling the space around the planet like a swarm of metal insects. Generals and admirals congratulated each other. They were about to crush the human rebellion and restore order to the galaxy. Then the humans arrived. Grace Morrison led the Vanguard fleet out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 40,000 ships against 2 million. The conclave commanders laughed at their censors. This would not even be a battle. It would be a slaughter. All ships, open fire, ordered Grand Admiral Kress of the Violet. Destroy them. 2 million weapons fired at once. Particle beams. Plasma torpedoes. Gravity bombs. The attack was so powerful that nearby asteroids were vaporized just from the energy, passing through space when the light cleared. Every human ship was still there. Undamaged. The shields around the human vessels glowed with soft blue light. They had absorbed an attack that should have destroyed a moon. The conclave officers stared at their screens in disbelief. "Our turn," Grace said quietly. The human fleet fired a single coordinated burst. One pulse of energy that crossed the distance between the fleets in the blink of an eye. It did not destroy the conclave ships. It did something worse. Every system on every vessel went dark. Engines died. Weapons failed. Life support flickered. Ben Taylor, the weapons designer who had created that pulse, watched from the Awakening's tactical station. He was a thin man with thick glasses and nervous hands. He had spent 15 years developing this technology. Seeing it work perfectly made him want to cry with joy. "Their ships are disabled," he reported. "Not destroyed. They can be restored, but not quickly." Grace nodded. "Begin recovery operations. Bring their command staff aboard for negotiation." The first battle was over in less than an hour. The conclave lost 2 million ships without a single vessel being destroyed. Humanity lost nothing. But the war was not over yet. On the third day, the Kasari made their move. They released their secret weapon, a drone swarm numbering in the billions. These tiny machines were designed to eat through any material. They had consumed entire planets in the past. They poured toward the human fleet like a river of silver death. Captain Danny Ortiz commanded the assault carrier, Second Dawn. He was a young man, barely 30 years old, with dark skin and a quick smile. When the drone swarm appeared on his sensors, he did not panic. "Launch countermeasure packages," he ordered. Small pods shot out from the human ships and exploded in the path of the swarm. They released a signal that Ben Taylor had designed based on architect technology. The signal rewrote the drone's programming in an instant. The Kasari watched in horror as their own swarm turned around and began flying back toward them. High Minister Voss screamed orders to shut the drones down, but the human signal had already changed their core functions. The machines would not obey Kasari commands anymore. "Do not let them reach the Kasari homeworld," Grace ordered. "Disable them before they cause harm." The human fleet fired another pulse. Billions of drones fell silent and drifted harmlessly through space. Humanity had stopped the swarm without killing a single Kasari soldier. The Andrith tried next. On the 5th day, their psychic warriors attacked. These beings could kill with their minds. They could reach across space and stop hearts. They had never met a species that could resist their power. They had never met humans with neural dampner. Every human soldier wore a small device behind their ear. It blocked psychic attacks completely. When the Andrith warriors reached out with their minds, expecting to feel human thoughts and fears, they found only silence. Commander Stephanie Vance led the ground assault on the Andrith command station. She was a solid woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Her soldiers moved through the station with perfect coordination. They did not use lethal weapons. Instead, they fired small darts that paralyzed targets for several hours. One by one, the Andrith warriors fell asleep without being harmed. Stephanie found the Andrith leader in a meditation chamber, still trying to use psychic powers that no longer worked. The being looked up at her with pure fear in its glowing eyes. "Please," it whispered. "Do not kill us." Stephanie lowered her weapon. We are not here to kill anyone. We are here to end a war. Surrender, and no one else needs to fall. The Androth surrendered. By the 9th day, the military forces of the conclave were broken. Their fleets were disabled. Their armies were paralyzed. Their secret weapons had failed. But the leaders of the conclave had one final plan. They fled to a fortress at the center of the galaxy. This was their most secret base, hidden for 10,000 years behind defenses that nothing could penetrate. Ancient architect technology protected it. No attack could reach it. No enemy had ever found it. Grace found it in 3 days. Human scientists had spent years studying architect technology. They understood it better than the conclave ever had. The fortress's defenses recognized human ships as authorized visitors. The doors opened without resistance. Grace walked through the ancient halls with a small escort. The fortress was beautiful in a cold, empty way. Crystals and metal formed walls that seemed to go on forever. At the center, she found them, the 12 leaders of the conclave, huddled together in a chamber meant for victory celebrations. Sovereign Aldrich stood at the front, trying to maintain his dignity, even though his hands were shaking. "You have won," he said bitterly. "Kill us and be done with it." Grace stopped a few meters away from him. She thought about her father, who had died just 2 years before this moment. She thought about the billions of humans who had suffered in exile. She thought about how easy it would be to destroy these beings who had caused so much pain. And then she shook her head. "We did not come here to kill you," she said. "We came here to change things." Aldrich stared at her in confusion. "Then, what do you want?" Grace looked at each of the conclave leaders in turn. "You exiled us because you feared what we might become. Your fear was right. We have become something powerful beyond your imagination. But power does not mean cruelty. We are not you." She stepped closer to Aldrich. "The conclave is finished as a ruling body. That era is over. But your species, your people, your cultures, they can continue. You can join us as partners in building something better. Not because we force you, but because you choose to." High Minister Voss made a clicking sound of disbelief. "You would spare us? After everything?" "Revenge is for small minds," Grace replied. "We have bigger plans." She turned and began walking away. "You have 3 days to decide. Join the new order peacefully, or watch as your empires crumble while we build something beautiful around you. The choice is yours." She left them there, stunned and shaken, trying to understand how they had been so completely defeated by a species they had thrown away like garbage. The war was over. Humanity had won. And they had done it without becoming the monsters the conclave had feared. 100 years had passed since the day humanity was thrown into the darkness. The galaxy was now a very different place, on the planet Nex Prime, where the conclave had once passed judgment on the human race. Children of a dozen species played together in gardens that stretched for miles. Valith young ones chased Kesari hatchlings through flowers that had been designed by human scientists to bloom in any light. The crystal walls of the ancient buildings now glowed with warm, gentle colors. The mood of this world had changed forever. The human-allied Federation had replaced the old conclave. But unlike the conclave, it did not rule through fear. Every species had a voice. Every world had a vote. Decisions were made together, not handed down from above. Dr. Nathan Cole, now an old man with thin white hair and hands that still loved to build things, stood in his laboratory on Luna. Through the window, he could see Earth rising over the horizon. The blue planet looked so peaceful, so beautiful. It was hard to believe that it had once been ripped from its place in the stars and thrown away like trash. "It's hard to believe it's been a century," said a voice behind him. Nathan turned and smiled. Grace Morrison walked toward him, still strong and straight despite her age. Human medicine had extended lifespans far beyond what anyone had thought possible, but Grace carried her years with dignity. Her father had died decades ago, but she still held his fire inside her. "I remember when this was all empty darkness," Nathan said. "Now look at us. Ships going to places we never imagined. Colonies in every corner of the galaxy. Even the conclave species have become our friends." Grace nodded and stood beside him at the window. "My father would have loved to see this. He always believed we could do it. Even when everyone else had given up hope, he kept pushing forward." "Jake Morrison was the best of us," Nathan agreed. "But you became something even better. He wanted survival. You gave us peace." The laboratory doors opened, and a young Veileth scientist walked in. Her name was Shira, and she was the great-granddaughter of someone who had served under Sovereign Aldrich. That old ruler had died 20 years ago, broken and bitter, never truly accepting the new order. But his descendants had grown up in a different galaxy, and they had become part of something better. "Admiral Morrison?" "Ambassador Lin is ready for her dress," Shira said with a respectful bow. Grace smiled at the young alien. 100 years ago, her people had sentenced humanity to death. Now they worked side by side with humans, learning and growing together. This was what victory really looked like. Not destroyed enemies, but former enemies becoming friends. The address was being held on Earth, in the restored city of Geneva. Katie Lynn, now 143 years old, stood at a podium in front of a crowd that stretched beyond what the eye could see. Humans and aliens stood together, watching the woman who had been there from the very beginning. Her voice was still clear and strong as she spoke. 100 years ago, the rulers of this galaxy decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist among the stars. They called us aggressive. They called us unpredictable. They called us a threat to order and stability. And they were right. The crowd listened in silence. We were dangerous. We still are, but not in the way they feared. We are dangerous because we refuse to accept limits. We are dangerous because we never stop trying to make things better. We are dangerous because when you push us down, we rise up stronger than before. Katie paused and looked out at the sea of faces, so many different species, united under the same sky. The conclave threw us into darkness because they believed that was where we belonged. They thought the void would swallow us. Instead, we swallowed the void. We turned nothing into everything. We turned exile into adventure. We turned punishment into purpose. She smiled, and tears glistened in her ancient eyes. They tried to bury us. They did not realize we were seeds. The crowd erupted in cheers. The sound rose up into the sky like a wave of joy and hope. Humans embraced aliens. Old enemies celebrated together. The galaxy had become something that the conclave could never have imagined. Later that day, Grace Morrison returned to her office on Luna. The celebration continued across 1,000 worlds, but she needed a moment of quiet. She stood at her window and looked out at the stars. A display screen on her desk showed the latest reports. A convoy of 300 colony ships was preparing to leave the Milky Way entirely. They were headed for Andromeda, the neighboring galaxy, 2 million light-years away. The journey would take years, but the ships were ready. The colonists were eager. Humanity was no longer content with one galaxy. The entire universe awaited. Grace thought about her father, about Katie Lynn, about Dr. Nathan Cole, and all the others who had worked so hard to bring them to this moment. Most of them were gone now, but their legacy lived on in every ship that flew, every world that bloomed, every child that laughed without fear. Her communicator beeped. It was a message from the Andromeda expedition, asking for her blessing before departure. She typed back a simple response. Go, explore, build, remember who you are and where you came from. And never let anyone tell you what you cannot do. You are human. You are impossible. Now go and prove it again. On a distant world at the edge of Kesari space, a young historian was finishing her greatest work. Her name was Vera, and she was descended from the very leaders who had tried to destroy humanity. She had spent her entire life studying the exile, the return, and the transformation of the galaxy. She wrote the final words of her book slowly, wanting to get them exactly right. They tried to end us. They only taught us to begin again. She put down her writing tool and looked out her window at the stars. Human ships passed by regularly now, carrying traders and scientists and explorers. They always waved when they saw her watching. She always waved back. The galaxy was at peace. Not a perfect peace, because nothing was ever perfect, but a real peace built on understanding instead of fear, built on cooperation instead of control, built by beings who had every reason to seek revenge but chose to seek something better instead. Vera closed her book and smiled. The old universe was gone. The new one was just beginning. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, 300 ships full of humans and their allies traveled toward new stars. They carried with them the lessons of 100 years. They carried hope and curiosity and the endless drive to explore. They carried the future, and the future looked bright.